All right, well, thanks for stopping in to Night Shift Video. My name is James, and today I'm joined by this dude,
Cody.
And this is Chiller Time. You know what I did there?
I don't, but I liked it.
It's a play off of Miller Time.
No.
Because we usually drink High Life on the show.
Stop it. I know. The one night we're doing pints here. This is great.
Yep. And they're all gone, and we need more. But we're gonna get spooky instead.
Oh yeah.
Because it's Chiller Time.
Chiller time.
So tonight I have a story about a potential cryptid. Well, it's not potential. This is known to be fictional, spread across the internet. But I chose it because I have a personal experience not too unlike this creature.
Ooh.
And it is called the Rake. During the summer of 2003, events in the northeastern United States involving a strange human-like creature sparked brief local media interest before an apparent blackout was enacted. Little or no information was left intact, as most online and written accounts of the creature were mysteriously destroyed. Primarily focused in rural New York and also seen in Idaho, the self-proclaimed witnesses told stories of their encounters with a creature of unknown origin. Emotions ranged from extremely traumatic levels of fright and discomfort to almost a childlike sense of playfulness and curiosity. While their published versions are no longer on record, the memories remained powerful. Several of the involved parties began looking for answers that year. In early 2006, the collaboration had accumulated nearly 24 documents dating between the 12th century and present day, spanning 4 different continents. In almost all cases, the stories were identical. I have been in contact, not I, the writer of the story. I have been in contact with a member of this group and was able to get some excerpts from their upcoming book. So first we have a suicide note from 1964. As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to let go of any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him. For once I awoke and felt his presence. And once I awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice. I looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might next awake to experience. I may never wake again. Goodbye. Found in the exact same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to a William and a Rose, and 1 loose personal letter with no envelope that said this: "Dearest Lenny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name."
Oh.
Weird, right? This is a journal entry translated from Spanish, dated 1880. I have experienced the greatest horror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. So, yeah. I saw his eyes when I closed mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand. I will not sleep. His voice. And then it trails off. This is a mariner's log from 1691. He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed, I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at request of the Rake. And then this is the big story from 2006.
Okay.
3 years ago, I had just returned from a trip to Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids right to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had got up to use the restroom. I used the moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and I told him that I thought he had gotten out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from the end of the bed so quickly his knee almost knocked me out of the bed. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for a second, I was able to see what caused the strange reaction. At the foot of our bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man or a large, hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened, but concerned about its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help it. My husband was peering over his arm and his knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing to me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion, right along the bed until it was a foot from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds. It was probably closer to 5, but it seemed like it took a long time in the moment. While looking at my husband, the creature then placed its hand on his knee and ran into the hallway, leading into our kids' rooms. I screamed and I ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt any of the children. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over, about 20 feet away. He turned around and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter, Clara. The creature ran down the stairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke only once more in her short life. Her words, "He is the Rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughter to the hospital. Neither of them survived. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York State who had seen the creature we now referred to as the Rake. It took the 4 of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believed to be accounts of the Rake. None of them gave any details or history or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages and never mentioned it again. The ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only that they were told to leave by the Rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the Rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near the end of my bed, and I left it running all night every night for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around on my bed each day when I woke up. By the end of the 2nd week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep while blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. This took me almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the Rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is that I've heard it before, and I now believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything that night, but for some reason, the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head make me very upset. I have not seen the Rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept. I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to see him staring at me. The Rake. This is a depiction of what the Rake looks like.
Oh, it's awful. It's terrifying.
So I have a story that the Rake reminded me of.
Okay.
So the Rake is also kind of known as like Slender Man's like bucktooth cousin.
Okay.
And maybe this story is maybe a little bit more related to Slender Man, but it seemed more like the Rake in just like the animalistic nature of it. But what we believe we saw was much taller than like what's in this picture that's kind of crouched down. So I don't know if the Rake stands up,
it's a little.
Maybe he's like 10 feet tall. We don't really know. He's all crouched down like a weird dog in this picture.
Yeah.
So it was like early high school, like, freshman or sophomore year. We had this group of friends who went to another school that lived like way out in the country, far enough that they went to a different school, obviously in a different district. And So we spent a lot of time driving out to their house because they just had all this land and we could just do all kinds of crazy shit, riding 4-wheelers around and shooting guns and, all the stuff that you do in the country.
Yep.
That we couldn't do in our town. And so we would go out there all the time and just driving back and forth on, all kinds of weather conditions. Yep. And there's 2 times. Both times it was really foggy. So that's kind of what's weird about it. We pulled up to our friend's house and they were gonna go inside and get something and then come back out. And she goes inside and then we're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then we see a tall, light colored figure come sprinting away from the house. And we immediately just think that it's her and she's trying to spook us or something. Or she's running back out to the car to get in the car. But she doesn't come back to the car. The thing just runs away out into the fields.
Yeah.
We're like, what the fuck was that? Oh, she's probably trying to scare us or something. Hey, come out. Hey, you can come out now. We saw you.
Right.
You're not gonna sneak up and scare us from the backside of the car. And then she walks out the front door.
Ew.
It was weird. It was a tall, lanky, almost naked looking, pale. It was weird. It was weird. Not unlike what I think the Rake may look like if he was standing on 2 legs.
Yeah.
Same house, same area of the country. Not too far. It wasn't the same house. It was actually another friend's house that was kind of around the country block,
Yep.
And but we're driving down the road that's connected to the first friend's house, and foggy as hell. And we see, we know that there's this one farm, and that guy had a ton of horses.
Okay.
And sometimes they'd get out, and so kind of had to be careful,
Oh,
especially if it was foggy out. You didn't want to run into a horse.
Don't want a horse. Yeah. Don't want to hit a horse.
And so we're being somewhat careful as we're driving down, but we're also teenagers, so we're probably still driving faster than we should be in this fog. And something comes bolting from the passenger side, from the field, and then it just stops right at where the fence line is. And again, it looked very tall and white. And it we were going fast enough that it stopped right there. We went and everybody's like, what the hell was that? And so we immediately turned around and then there's nothing there.
Ew. That's terrifying.
That's probably, and I had forgotten about those stories until I read the Rake story and I was like, oh shit, that reminds me of this thing that happened to me.
Ew. I don't like any of those stories.
Nope.
Don't like any of them.
Okay, well, that about does it for us tonight. That is the story of the Rake. For Night Shift Video, I am James, and this is...
Creeped Out Cody.
And we're just saying, thanks for stopping in.